One of the most important aspects of researching and writing a research paper is the ability to integrate your quotes into your own writing. That's taking all of the sources that you have found, whether they are from opposing viewpoints or they are from an internet article that you found or a book that you have found or an interview that you've done or any of the different ways that you can get information for your paper. The hardest part is how to integrate that information into your paper without sounding like a bunch of copying and pasting. I would like for you to only have 2 quotes in your paper. The rest of it, I feel, is using your sources, of course, but not making it word for word. So instead, paraphrasing or summarizing, or if you're a really strong writer, to embed your quotes into your writing. And so that's what this video is about today, looking at the PowerPoint over quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. Remember that when you write a paper, you have to give your sources credit in 2 spots. One, the works cited page, where you list all of your sources in alphabetical order in the correct MLA format into your paper. The other place that you want to give your sources credit is inside the actual paper. So when you paraphrase, when you summarize, or when you quote one of your sources, you have to use parenthetical documentation. And that's what this PowerPoint and video will cover today. Quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing, 3 different techniques that you can use in your paper. In other words, it's getting information from somebody else, putting it in your own words, but it adds credibility to your work because you've supported it with ideas from other sources. Quoting, of course, means to cite a source word for word, not changing anything, and you have it in quotation marks. Paraphrasing is when you put that information that you found from a source into your own words in about the same number of words. So if it's a full sentence that's about 10 words, you paraphrase it, but it's still about the same number of words, but it's in your own words. Summarizing is when you reduce it, though. You put your source in your own words in a condensed number of words. Here is a works cited entry from an article that I found on legalizing marijuana. You can see that it is in MLA format. I have the hanging indent, which it means that your second and subsequent lines are indented. I have hit the tab key here, or I have used Word to format it for you, and I'll show you how to do that at the end of this recording. So here, that was my source. So this is a source from Jeffrey Myron, and I'm going to integrate it into my paper. If I quote it, I have to use it in exact words. I can't change anything, and I have to put the author's last name and the page number in parentheses. You notice my period goes after the parentheses. Now, if it is an online source, or if it is an HTML file and you don't have page numbers, then you would just put Myron in parentheses. Now, let's say I quoted Myron and then put a few more sentences that I paraphrased. Wait to put your documentation until you are leaving a page number or changing a page number or changing sources. I want to try to avoid full sentence quotes. The best way to quote is if you embed somebody. And so if you embed it, it means you use a snippet. And what I call a snippet is about maybe 5 to 6 words in a row that I liked from a quote. So here's a quote from John Steinbeck's novel of Mice and Men. I ought to have shot that dog myself, George. I should not have let no stranger shoot my dog. But I like that phrase. I like what Candy said. So I want to just put a snippet of it. I don't want to quote the whole thing he said. I just want to quote, I ought to have shot that dog myself. So I have my own words mixed in with the quotations from the actual source. I ought to have shot that dog myself, laments Candy, as he reflects on how he should have performed his task. This last part of the sentence is my own words, my own paraphrase, but I still have to give it credit. You can embed a quote in the middle. You can embed it at the end. And if you're a really strong writer, you can embed in several snippets. So use this paraphrasing and embedding quote tool in your own writing. If I use the same source from Myron and I have embedded it, I still have to document it. So maybe I really like the way he said, subject to standard regulation and taxes. And then I add my own words that I kind of paraphrase what he said. Subject to standard regulations and taxes, marijuana would have the same stipulations as other commodities. I wrote this part. These are my own words, but I got it from Myron. I didn't quote the whole thing, but I still have to document. If I quote at the end, if I use my embedded at the end, I still have to give the documentation. But why do I only have to put 34 here? Because I mentioned the author's name here. I wouldn't want to list him here and here. It would sound redundant. Again, paraphrasing is putting it in your own words. So let's say I like marijuana will be taxed no different than other goods. I changed that same quote, but I put it in my own words, but I still had to give Myron credit because I didn't say it. But you'll notice there's no quotation marks here. Summarizing, the same thing. If I summarize the whole paragraph into one sentence, I still have to document where I got it. Again, quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing, all important skills to use when you're writing your research paper. You want to mix it up. You want to quote some, you want to paraphrase some, you want to summarize some. And if you're a really strong writer, you want to try to embed snippets of quotes into your paper as well. If you don't have an author, and a lot of times you'll have an article and it won't have an author because maybe it was written by a bunch of authors and they didn't want to list them all, or maybe they don't know who wrote it, or maybe the author didn't want to be known. You use a snippet or a condensed abbreviated form of the article. So if the article was titled, for example, Discovering the Causes of Illiteracy, then I wouldn't want to put all of that, discovering the causes of illiteracy, in my quotation, in my parenthetical documentation. But I wouldn't just want to put discovering without quotation marks, because that would mean it was somebody's last name by discovering. Okay. So I put it in quotes indicating this is an article title. The article doesn't have an author. All right, now let's say you are writing a research paper and you are wanting to work on your works cited page. Let me stop and share this real quick. All right, so I've got my works cited page here. I'm going to center the title, Works Cited. It is a continuation of my paper. And then I'm going to go up here to paragraph, and I'm going to make sure it's clicked on double spacing and no extra space between articles of the same style. And now let me go to the website, and I'm going to find an article real quick. So I'm going to go to library. If you remember watching the databases video on how to find an article on the databases, I'm going to go to opposing viewpoints. I have not logged in yet, so I'm going to log in. And let's say I'm doing it on legalizing marijuana. I'm just going to search one real quick. Let's see if I want to use this one. And I've read through the article, and I'm going to go to cite. I'm going to make sure this is on MLA. Remember, this is our cheat method, our easy way of doing it correctly. That's the benefit of using databases. So I've copied this. You saw I just highlighted, I right-clicked, and then I copied. Then I'm going to go to my works cited, and right here, I'm just going to right-click and I'm going to paste it. Well, What's wrong with that? Okay, well, it's double spaced, but this is not indented, right? So if I hit the tab key, you see what happens? Let me show you again. Everything goes over. That's wrong. That's not how it's supposed to be. So if that happens and you've hit the tab key, hit the backspace button. Now hit the enter button twice. The first time I hit enter, nothing happened. Then I'm going to hit backspace. Now I'm going to hit tab again. Now you notice that it only tabbed the lines that I wanted to tab. Now, I've copied and pasted this. I am not done because when I copied and pasted it, it lost my italics. There are certain things that need to be italicized. So if you want to go back to this, you can see that this needs to be italicized. And then the opposing viewpoints needs to be italicized. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to italicize it, and then I'm going to italicize the database. Now I'm correct. Okay. Now I'm ready to go to the next works cited. Now, maybe this one's a T, like maybe by somebody named Thompson, and that would be fine. But if I have an article written by somebody that has an A or B or anything before S, my next one, I'll need to hit the enter button and go back up here and then copy and paste it here. All right. So again, 1301 is kind of learning how to write a research paper correctly, how to integrate your sources correctly. But most importantly, it's how to write that works cited page in MLA correctly, and it's how to document using parenthetical documentation. Please remember that the OWL Purdue website that is there for you on our Start Here tab. Let me go to our class. And go to the Start Here tab. Remember that the OWL Purdue, that is a perfect place for you to understand how to write in MLA format with a research paper. And so go over here to the MLA guide, and it lets you know all kinds of information, all kinds of sources and things like that. So when in doubt, search the MLA, making sure that you are in the correct MLA format. All right, I hope this helps. I know that the research paper can be very stressful, but again, this first semester, it's just learning how to do the steps. And so that's why we're stretching this research paper over such a few weeks instead of just 1 week.